This is Igor Thiago.
It's round the goalkeeper and in! What a spectacular season Igor Thiago is having.
And he was happy with what he saw. There's Thiago on the stretch. He tiptoed in.
And he has been tearing up the Premier League. This guy is scoring every week, bullying defenders and putting Brentford on his back.
Igor Thiago, Brazilian forward, 24 years of age, 3 goals behind Erling Haaland in the Golden Boot. 3 goals behind.
Everyone thought these guys would struggle after losing Mbumo, Wissa, and Thomas Frank. But the Bees are doing better than before. Thiago has already scored more goals than any Brazilian has ever scored in a single Premier League season. Not hard to reach that when you're smashing in hat-tricks against Everton.
Going forward here, Schade, and now it's a third, and it's Igor Thiago!
Brentford fans are already singing his name, and watching him play now, it feels like he was always destined for the stage, leading the line in the toughest league in the world. But that's what makes his story so crazy. Not long ago, nobody in England knew who Thiago was. He wasn't an academy star at a big club. He wasn't hyped as a teenager. He was a tall, raw striker from Brazil, working as a bricklayer, doing whatever he could to help his family survive. Football was the dream, but life came first. And somehow, step by step, country by country, league by league, his dream became a reality. This is the story of how a bricklayer from Brazil has become one of the best strikers in the Premier League. Thiago's story doesn't start at a big academy or a famous club. It starts in Gama, a working class city near Brasilia. Life was hard from the beginning. When Thiago was just 13 years old, his father passed away, and overnight, everything changed. His mother, Maria, became the only provider for the family. She worked as a street cleaner, leaving home early every morning and coming back exhausted. Money was always tight, sometimes there wasn't enough food. So he stepped up. As a kid, Thiago did whatever he could to help his mom survive. He carried groceries for people at supermarkets, he handed out flyers on the street, he worked on a construction site as a bricklayer's assistant with his uncle. Still, the love for the game never left him. Whenever he had time, he played futsal or kicked a ball around with his friends. Football was his escape. His real connection to football came through his older brother. Watching him play sparked something inside Thiago. He joined a small local club called Grêmio Ocidental and started playing futsal seriously. He was a late bloomer, especially compared to kids who had been in academies since they were 6 or 7 years old. By the time Thiago was 15 though, he was actually close to quitting football completely. He went to multiple trials and got rejected again and again. The first club he was finally able to join was the under-17 team for Vera FC. It was there that people started to notice his abilities. He was tall, strong, fast, and more importantly, relentless. Scouts from Cruzeiro, one of Brazil's biggest clubs, took a chance on him. So in 2019, at just 17 years old, Thiago moved to Cruzeiro's academy. For a kid who had grown up struggling to afford food, it felt unreal. He made his debut on January 22nd, 2020. His time at Cruzeiro, though, wasn't easy. Between 2020 and 2022, he played 64 games and scored 10 goals. In the league, he only managed 4 goals in 43 appearances. There were some tough moments, long goal droughts, games where nothing went right. But inside the club, coaches saw what the stats didn't show. A striker who worked non-stop, a player with size and pace, someone who never stopped fighting. Looking back, Brazil was definitely not where Thiago became a star. It's where he became strong, and those years built the foundation for everything that came next. In early 2022, Thiago got a call that changed everything. A move to Europe. Ludogorets Razgrad. At the time, Thiago was not a big name. He wasn't lighting up Brazil with crazy numbers. But Ludogorets saw something others didn't. At just 20 years old, Thiago left Brazil for the first time in his life and moved to Bulgaria. New country, new language, new weather, and a brand new style of football. Razgrad was a small city, far from home, and everything felt unfamiliar. Ludogorets eased them in by starting him with their reserve team, Ludogorets 2. In his very first game for the reserves, he actually scored. A week later, he scored twice. In just 4 games, he had 3 goals, and he was adapting fast. Even though he was playing against bigger defenders with a faster tempo and more physical football, none of it scared him. Within weeks, Thiago was promoted to the first team, and then came his senior debut, away against CSK Sofia. Thiago came on as a sub, and then he scored a goal on his debut, and from that moment on, he never looked back. The season ended perfectly. Ludogorets won the Bulgarian league title, their 11th in a row, and Thiago got his first taste of silverware in Europe. Now, Now, even though he had joined mid-season, he already had shown that he belonged at that level. But the real breakthrough came next year. In the 2022-2023 season, Thiago exploded. He became one of Ludogorets' main attackers. Defenders couldn't handle him. He was just too strong, too quick, and always in the right place. By the end of the season, Thiago had 20 goals and 11 assists. Ludogorets didn't just win the league. These guys won everything. League title, Bulgarian Cup, Super Cup. It was a domestic treble, and Thiago played a huge role in all of it. One goal that really stood out came against CSK Sofia. Ludogorets won a tight 1-0 game because Thiago scored the decisive goal. And matches like that showed how far he had come. He wasn't just stat padding or scoring tap-ins. He was actively deciding games. By the end of his time in Bulgaria, it was clear that Thiago was a striker on the rise. Scouts from bigger leagues were watching closely. Other parts of Europe had noticed him. And once again, Thiago was ready to take the next step. In June of 2023, Brugge signed Thiago on a 4-year deal. The fee was around 7.9 million euro, which was a huge number for a player coming from the Bulgarian league. And it was actually a record sale for a Bulgarian club. For Ludogorets, it was the perfect deal. For Brugge, it was a bet on potential. At first, some people raised their eyebrows. I mean, who the hell was this guy? But it didn't take long for Thiago to start paying that fee back. In his very first league game, he came off the bench and scored a late equalizer to get a 1-1 draw. 1 week later, he scored the only goal in a 1-0 away win. 2 games, 2 goals. But unfortunately, after that hot start, his goals suddenly dried up like my balls on a hot summer day. Game after game went by and he just wasn't scoring. 9 matches in a row without a goal. For a striker, that kind of run messes with your head. Those are numbers that Højlund was putting up. It ended up being the hardest stretch of his time in Belgium, but Thiago kept fighting. Finally, in early November of 2023, the breakthrough came. In a Belgian Cup match, Thiago scored in a 6-0 win. It wasn't a league goal. It was one of those games where everybody eats, but it didn't matter. The ball finally hit the back of the net and a weight was lifted off his shoulders. What followed next was one of the most ridiculous scoring runs Belgium has seen in years. First, it was a huge night in Europe. Away in Turkey against Besiktas, Thiago scored twice in a 5-0 win in the Conference League.
Oh, good ball in, Thiago! Brugge are not in the mood for messing about. Just shuffling their pack, but Brugge starting the second half just as they did the first, and they've scored again. And Thiago has his second of the night.
Across December and January, Thiago scored 18 goals in just 12 games. He scored with his head, with both feet, from the penalty spot, from rebounds, from tight angle, power goals, poacher goals, big goal. The guy was a full-on goal machine. By the end of the 2023-2024 season, his numbers were insane. 18 league goals and 29 goals in all competition. And he also got 6 assists on top of that. His goals powered Club Brugge to the Belgian league title and helped them reach the semifinals of the Conference League. The guy went from struggling to score to being one of the most feared strikers in the league. What's great about him is that he never stopped pressing. He never stopped running. He used his 6'3" frame to bully center backs, to win headers, and create chaos in the box. But more than anything, he always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. By the summer of 2024, the secret was out. Bigger leagues were watching, and one club, famous for spotting hidden gems, knew exactly what they were looking at. And that club was Brentford. Igor Thiago was ready for the Premier League.
Played at Club Brugge, scored a number of goals. Started in Brazil, was a futsal player in Brazil, got picked up there, taken to Bulgaria, ended up in Club Brugge, and Brentford by him.
In February of 2024, Brentford locked in his signing on a 5-year deal, set to officially start that summer. The fee was huge by their standards, around £30 million, a club record and also the biggest sale ever from the Belgian league. Thiago was coming in to replace a massive figure. Ivan Toney had been the face of Brentford's attack for years, scoring goals for fun in the Premier League while betting on himself in Bet365. So replacing him was never going to be easy. And then, just as everything was about to begin, disaster struck. In his very first appearance for Brentford, a preseason friendly in July of 2024, Thiago suffered a serious knee injury, a meniscus tear. Before the season had even started, his campaign was basically over. For a new signing desperate to prove himself, it was brutal timing. And what followed was a lost season. The 2024-2025 campaign became a long, lonely grind of rehab and setbacks. Because you see, Thiago ended up making his competitive debut in November, coming off the bench against Everton. But just as he started to build rhythm, he suffered another blow, a joint infection in the same knee. That meant more treatment, more time out, and just more frustration. By the end of the season, the numbers told a very painful story. 8 Premier League appearances, less than 200 minutes, and 0 goals. For a £30 million striker, it was the worst case scenario. Fans barely got to see him. Some wondered if the move would ever work. Now Thiago, he never stopped believing. Behind the scenes, he was working very hard, every day.
Sometimes when you have some injury, it's harder to come back, to be able to play again. So every single day I come here to train, 1 touch, 2 touch, just to come back. When I come back faster.
At the same time, Brentford themselves were changing fast. Their longtime manager Thomas Frank left. Mbeumo and Wissa were sold. Their new head coach was their set-piece coach. As a result, most pundits wrote off Brentford before the 2025-2026 season even started. Everybody thought they would get relegated. And right in the middle of all of that uncertainty stood Thiago. But at least he was fully fit, so he finally got his real chance. And boy, did he make the most of it. On the opening weekend of the 2025-2026 season, Thiago scored his first Premier League goal away at Nottingham Forest.
Igor Thiago has scored his first Brentford goal.
It didn't win them the game, but at least he had gone on the score sheet for his new club. Then in late September, Brentford hosted Manchester United, and in the first half, Thiago scored twice. He bullied that poverty club's defenders and finished with confidence.
The other end of the field, it's Igor Thiago with no flag at this stage. And Igor Thiago thumps the ball resoundingly. And it was carried out by Altai. Igor Thiago scores again, and Brentford are 2 up.
Brentford ended up winning 3-1. Week after week, Thiago scored, goal after goal. He was every defender's worst nightmare. By November, he had earned the Premier League Player of the Month, which was an insane achievement for someone who hadn't even scored a single goal the season before. At one point, only one man had more goals than him, and that was Erling Haaland. Brentford kept winning too, and they were getting big wins. They beat Liverpool, Manchester United, Newcastle, Villa. Everybody had predicted a struggle, but instead Brentford were flying, and Thiago was a big reason why. Then came January, and Thiago exploded at Goodison Park. Against Everton, he scored a hat-trick and a 4-2 win, and the Brentford fans went wild. This wasn't just a good run of form from him anymore. He was dominating the league. 4 days later, he scored twice again. 16 league goals by early January. He had become the highest scoring Brazilian in a single Premier League season, and he had done it halfway through the campaign. On the pitch, he fit Brentford perfectly. He pressed non-stop, he ran the channels, he was great in the air, and finished chances ruthlessly. His shot conversion rate is among the best in the league. Fans fell in love with him very quickly. The energy he played with, his work rate, it was contagious. The funny part is that Brentford have basically built a striker factory, and it didn't start in the Premier League, it started all the way back in the Championship. Mope scored 37 goals across 2 seasons, then got sold to Brighton in 2019. Brentford replaced him with Ollie Watkins, who scored 25 goals in the 2019-2020 season. Then Watkins got sold to Aston Villa, so Brentford replaced him with Ivan Toney, who scored 31 goals, got them promoted, and became the face of the club. When Toney was banned for betting and later left, Wissa and Mbeumo stepped up and basically became a deadly duo. Then they got sold for huge money, and now Thiago has stepped up. If you watch this guy in Belgium, he always scored like a classic Brentford striker. Headers from crosses, tap-ins, rebounds. He was very similar to Ivan Toney in the type of chances he lived off. In fact, he even broke one of Toney's club records this season, becoming the fastest Brentford player to hit double digits in a Premier League season. Thiago was a kid who almost quit football. He was a bricklayer who worked construction just to survive, and now he's leading the line in the Premier League, and this still feels like just the beginning of his career. If you like this video, I'm sure you'll love this one too. Check it out right here.